Welcome to Community Health Briefs, where AI hosts share short, clear stories about research shaping healthier futures. Each episode highlights new work from members of the College for Community Health at Montclair State University, showing how ideas connect to the social and structural forces behind health. In short, this is research you can trust, explained by AI in minutes.
Welcome back. Today, we're jumping straight into some really critical research. It's all about those subtle but really powerful messages parents pass down about identity and race, specifically within the Asian American community. Our source today is mainly a study from the Journal of Family Issues. The lead researcher is Dr. Se-Eun Kim, an assistant professor over at Montclair State University, and her colleagues.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here, I think, is that we're looking beyond just if parents talk about race. We're digging into how they talk about it and, how their own cultural identity shapes those conversations. And that link between the parents' background, their cultural orientation, and the actual specific messages they give their kids about, well, navigating life in a multiracial society. That's foundational. It really is key to a child's emotional health, their behavior, all of it.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little for you. The researchers looked at two kind of key orientations for parents. There's acculturation that's like how much a parent has adapted to mainstream American culture.
Right.
And then enculturation, how much they hold on to their culture of origin. And the core question is, well, does your level of either of those change the advice you give your kids about race? And crucially, what does that do to the kids? Does it lead to more internalizing problems, like depression, anxiety?
Oh, the externalizing ones.
Exactly. Or externalizing problems like acting out, conduct issues.
Precisely. So what they did was survey 159 Asian American parents. They looked at their levels of acculturation and inculturation, and then they measured 7 different types of messages parents might use about race and ethnicity. These range from things like maintain your heritage culture, all the way to one very specific message, telling children to avoid people from other racial or ethnic groups. The study calls it avoidance of outgroups.
Ah, okay. And that avoidance message seems pretty central here, which brings us to the first key finding, right?
Yes.
About acculturation being protective.
Yes, exactly. So parents who were more acculturated, the ones who felt more adapted to mainstream U.S. culture, they were significantly less likely to use those messages telling kids to avoid other groups.
Less likely to say avoid out groups.
Right. And that really matters because not using that specific avoidance message was linked to fewer internalizing problems in their children, less emotional distress, maybe fewer issues with peers. And interestingly, these more acculturated parents were also more likely to talk about things like becoming American or promoting equality, cultural pluralism.
So more openness to other groups.
Yeah, it suggests a kind of greater comfort or skill in helping their kids engage positively with diversity.
Okay, wait. So if acculturation is protective in this way, what about the parents who lean more towards enculturation? The ones really focused on retaining their heritage culture. Does that automatically cause issues?
Well, not necessarily all kinds of issues, but here's the connection they found. Parents who are more enculturated were actually positively associated with using that avoidance of outgroups message more often.
So more likely to tell kids to avoid other groups.
Yes, and here's the really critical part, the mechanism. Using that specific avoidance of outgroups message was, in turn, linked to more externalizing problems in the kids.
More acting out, conduct problems, hyperactivity.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a really strong link.
Yeah.
So the avoidance message itself seems to be the driver there, regardless of maybe the parent's intention.
It really seems to be the most influential pathway they identified. You can understand the parent's perspective. They're likely trying to protect their kids, shield them from discrimination, maybe racism.
Especially with things like the rise in anti-Asian hate recently.
Absolutely. That's a very real concern. But the message itself, telling a child that interactions with other groups are inherently risky or should be avoided, that can create a lot of internal conflict for the child, a kind of dissonance.
Dissonance, how so?
Well, the advice they get at home, avoid them, doesn't match their daily reality, right? Like in a diverse classroom or just playing in the neighborhood. It creates confusion, maybe frustration.
And that frustration might bubble up as those externalizing behaviors, the acting out.
It could, yeah. Research suggests that messages focusing on the danger of interacting with other ethnic groups can push kids towards avoidance coping strategies generally.
And that's linked to things like lower self-esteem, feeling less capable.
Exactly. Lower self-efficacy.
Okay, so connecting this to the bigger picture, like community health,
Yeah.
what's the practical takeaway here for people working with families?
I think the big actionable insight is for practitioners, educators, anyone working with Asian American families, really. It's about understanding this specific dynamic. It means we need to work with parents, validate their protective instincts because those are real, but also help them maybe explore and reframe that specific avoidance message.
So find ways to protect without promoting avoidance.
Right. Find strategies that align with cultural values, but also support the child's psychological well-being and help them navigate the diverse world they actually live in. Reduce that frustrating dissonance.
So if we boil it down, the main takeaway seems crystal clear. The most impactful factor here, linking how parents are culturally oriented to their child's adjustment, isn't like acculturation or inculturation itself.
No, not directly.
But it's the transmission of that one specific message domain, avoidance of outgroups.
That's it. And reducing that message seems to act as a protective factor, particularly via increased parental acculturation.
But that really sharpens the focus for mental health providers, for educators. It gives them maybe better cultural fluency. Understanding which socialization messages are potentially problematic is key to supporting Asian American youth.
It's about nuance.
Definitely. So, final thought here, and this is maybe something for you to think about. We know early behavior problems can often predict issues later in life. So if this avoidance messaging is potentially so harmful, how can we design better preventive interventions? How can we help tailor advice on race relations to foster positive development that actually fits with a young person's real everyday experiences outside the home?
That's the challenge, isn't it? Aligning the messages with lived reality.
Something to consider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Community Health Briefs. This podcast was created with the help of AI, verified by the paper's author, and does not necessarily reflect the views of the College for Community Health or Montclair State University. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode. Make sure to subscribe and check us out at www.montclair.edu/CCHL to learn more about us and the amazing work we're doing for community health.